Welcome back to episode 20 of the Invictus F1 Podcast with me, Gareth, and Sab, as always. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm surviving the atrocious weather I've got in my area, but we're all good, thanks. It's another week, isn't it, with the podcast? Number 20 now. Number 20. Wow, I can't believe we've done that many already so soon. We've got interesting topics to discuss tonight. F1 looking to go carbon neutral. Alex Albon signing on with Red Bull as well, and several other bits, and no doubt the dreaded hot lap at the end. So yeah, it should be a good evening tonight.
Yeah, looking forward to this one. As you say, episode 20 cannot move. Big 2-0 for us. And yeah, thanks to everyone that's been watching, listening over the last 20 episodes. It's definitely your feedback and your views that have kept us going, and hopefully we'll be here for another 20. And we'll be continuing to entertain you all. But of course, the podcast is always uploaded to the likes of SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. So if you can't listen live here on YouTube at 8 p.m, then make sure you check it out on all your podcasting sites. And yeah, I mean, we'll kick off straight away, and we'll go straight into that big news story that came out yesterday, I believe it was, maybe the day before. And it is that F1 has released a statement, and it's planning to go carbon neutral by 2030. And I think it's ambitious. But it's definitely achievable. I don't think it's one of those things that we see with the likes with when countries say they're going to go carbon neutral. It's obviously at a much bigger, much grander scale, and there's a lot more intricacy in it. But with Formula One, I think the biggest thing, I'm not quite sure, it'd be good to know your opinion on this, is will they get past that sort of that stigma? Because we saw quite recently with Lewis Hamilton how he when he sort of made that pledge online about the fact that everyone should be vegan, and that equally that it's killing the environment, and everyone, you saw that you had almost a 50-50 split. You had those people that were supporting him saying, yeah, you should have the right to say that, and then equally you had those guys that came out, oh well, you drive a car around a track, and like the exhaust fumes of getting you from around the track and to the track, and equally flying around the world, like your carbon footprint is probably like 100 times greater than the average person. So will Formula One have that same sort of stigma as Lewis had, with you have these quite glamorous events happening around the world, which we know that get, or planes shipped in, ships, or like with containers shipped in with all their pieces and units brought in, and is that the biggest stigma for them to get past, or is it actually the fundamental trying to find all these renewable sources of energy that will be able to power F1 to go carbon neutral?
I probably say the latter. I think overall, I know Lewis Hamilton did get a lot of stick. Well, yeah, quite a bit of stick, didn't he, for what he said? But I think overall, people, if they could see a sport which is as big as Formula One that is trying to make an effort to help the planet and help the way they go about racing, and not just on track, but likes of around the track and the events they do, and like the recycling and using of plastic and stuff like that. If they can achieve all that, then I think the general fan would be behind it, because you don't need to use, like, for example, a million plastic beer cups, do you? There's easier ways to go about that. So things like that, I think people would get on board with, and it seems like a very ambitious target for them to set. Then, by my opinion, I think it is a good idea. If it's possible, it is a very good idea. It's just, it's going to be very difficult for them to achieve. But as we've seen with these current engines, what they've achieved with these current engines and the power they get from them, with the little amount of fuel they use and everything else that has gone into them, it's like set the standard, hasn't it, in the hybrid era, so to speak. And if they can manage to have done that with these engines, then surely with all their great minds and everybody pulling together to work out their plan for this carbon neutral future, then who knows what Formula One can do? Formula One have set some pretty high standards throughout its life, and right now they're unbelievable achievements what they're doing with the engine. So I wouldn't be surprised if they managed it, but I just think logistically and everything else, I think it's going to be a huge task for them to achieve this.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to find out. Sort of like I imagine in the coming weeks we'll find out a few more details behind the statement that's come out and how they're planning on and implementing it in the future. But it's things like the is it just Formula One as if as a whole, or does this include the tracks? Because we know that some tracks obviously will run sort of like as a customer to Formula One. Some will run sort of separately. And do the tracks then have to be carbon neutral, not carbon neutral themselves, but we know that circuits will they be using single-use plastics? Will they be using renewable energy, solar, wind power, geothermal, things like that will help with sort of that, bringing that level up to being carbon neutral, to outlay any sort of movement we know with bringing facilities, logistics in when it comes to obviously exhaust fumes or the like with that sort of aspect. So I think it is a very it is a great idea. I'm all for everywhere going carbon neutral and trying to improve their footprint on the planet when it comes to how much waste they use, and equally how much they can kind of give back. And I think Formula One has got the opportunity to kind of really kind of make that first step when in the sport world, with kind of trying to clamp down. And I think it came out yesterday with how carbon neutral some of the football clubs in the Premier League are, and you can see some clubs are sort of working towards the future. I believe Man City was up there with one of the best, and with how they have their whole training facility is completely carbon neutral, and it's that sort of thing. I'm fully behind that. Think it's a brilliant idea. They're looking at 100% renewable energy powered offices, facilities, and factories. So obviously all the F1 factories back in the UK or wherever being run on 100% renewable energy, which is brilliant. It says that it currently will cover the plan for 2020 or 2030. Sorry, carbon neutral will cover the cars, on-track activity, and operations. So operations, whether that's sort of just on site, whether it's off site as well, because we know obviously F1 have got offices all around the world. And then equally on-track activity, does that mean all the feeder series? Because you've got F2, F3, the Porsche Super Cup, they race there as well. So have they also got to look at sort of making those engines more sustainable? And equally, they're aiming to be sustainable, or Formula One as a whole is aiming to be sustainable by 2025, eliminating all single-use plastics. Waste on site will be either reused or recycled, and it's a great plan, and I think it's, if anything, and this is very cynical, it's very good PR for Formula One, which will sound cynical, but these days it's very easy I mean, we even say, I really don't want to get into politics, but we see various political parties all around the world say that they're aiming to be carbon neutral or that they are, and it's very easy to kind of use a smokescreen of using that sort of like how energy efficient the country is, and so it will be interesting to see if they stick to this plan, they get to 2030, and they are able to fully release statements to say that they are completely carbon neutral, and if anything start to look to going carbon positive, because although you will have the cars still driving around the track and you will still have all the logistics, obviously you want to go carbon positive at the end. So it's going to be a great idea. Can't wait to see what Formula One can do with this. And I think one of the really good things that they're doing, and it's not just benefiting Formula One, it's benefiting sort of the general population, is that we know that a lot of the manufacturers and the constructors are working on ICEs and the internal combustion engines in the cars. And then equally that sort of that hybrid power that has come in with this V6 era, that's starting to slowly filter into the general motoring industry now. So a lot more cars going cleaner. We know the likes of Renault, Honda, and Mercedes have been working on this, and it's good to see that sort of Formula One is now at the forefront of sort of really pushing this sort of cleaner energy, more hybrid technology when it comes to engines to benefit not just the likes of Lewis Hamilton on the track, but you or I when we're driving our cars from A to B.
Exactly, yeah, that is an exact point. You see now, for example, at my local Tesco, they are currently installing electric power points for cars now to be used. All this technology what F1 has brought in, it just shows you how good a job they have done with this way of building engines, because you're seeing a lot more now. You're seeing a lot more electric vehicles out there. But for me, my question is, all those things you listed, like for example, do the feeder series need to do all this? For me, I want to know is what is the cost going to be of all this? Because if, for example, you say the F2 and F3 cars have got to go the way of Formula One, how much is that going to cost the lower teams to afford these engines? Now, I can understand there might be ways to make cheaper versions of these engines, but still, I can't imagine they're going to be cheaper than the engines they're running now. So, if they're going really going for it, I know they're already in the V6 here already in the F2, but if they're really going for it, it's going to just cost even more. And it's like a rich man throwing money at things to make things better. Sometimes it just looks like it's just too unachievable. And like you say, with the Porsche Super Cups, they're going to have to change all the way they go as well. And for me, it just sounds a lot of money. And like you say, if the tracks as well have got to go, well, you would imagine they have to go that way as well, the likes of Silverstone, what have you. And you look at countries like China, for me, that you see a lot of pollution in those sort of countries. You see the smog in the cities and stuff, and they are years away from anything like carbon neutral from what I can see. I'm no expert. Somebody could probably tell me I'm completely wrong, but it just looks like they're going to need a lot of help, not just doing it on themselves. They're going to need a lot of help from everybody who's involved, from the circuits, from the teams, everything involved. And I just think, for me, it like you say, being a bit cynical, for me, it's a very good way of scoring brownie points to make it look like you're doing good. I hope it does work. I really do. I don't want to come across as saying it's a bad idea, but I just think if they could just do some of it, like the greener ways of supporting with the fans and stuff, with reusable plastics and stuff like that, then that is a step forward. But I just think overall, I think the cost of it just sounds astronomical to me.
I think you've got to look at it when it comes to this. It's always going to be a slow process, and it's almost a generational thing. The newer generation will be more savvy when it comes to renewable energy and to how to lower their own carbon footprint. Obviously, we see this. I don't want to say a vegan movement at all, because I don't want to put a stigma behind it. But we see people becoming more aware of obviously some of the benefits of perhaps consuming less meat products. So I think it's going to be a general like more of a general sway to in the next sort of generation or so, in the next 20-30 years, as people becoming more aware and quite happy, or much sort of easier to accept these sort of changes, and equally the fact that you might have to put money into making something better in the long run, and we know that you have the opportunity to really sort of like focus on this, and that it will be a benefit sort of going forward, and yeah, like you say, it will be interesting to see what they do when it comes to the likes of going to China, where obviously it's not a priority, and they are sort of not really great when it comes to their own sort of the general population pollution level, and it would be interesting to see what Formula One will do with that, and then equally, I think a positive with sort of how we look at this era as we've gone into the V6 is that I don't think nowadays with costs it's that we're seeing the likes of although we know that costs are astronomical, and I mean crazy money when it comes to the amount of technology and research that goes into these cars, but these days obviously we don't see that many sort of engine blow-ups, oil slicks. We don't see fuel leaks too often, and if they do, they're on quite a small scale. And because these engines are so almost run by a computer, it's most likely if you're going to have a failure in the car now, it's going to be an electrical failure. We see power unit failures quite often with just one of the electrical components just turning itself off. So I think that it's the engines are cleaner in the car. It's just transferring that technology and that sort of reasoning throughout the rest of Formula One. And like you say, it will, if the feeder series and the support series have to do the same, it will incur a cost at the time. But I think it's definitely one of those things that you kind of have to bite the bullet with this, because if you are going to improve and you are going to kind of really be at that forefront of renewable technology when it comes to promoting a series, and I mean, a series that's already doing that, and I don't think it gets enough credit because people still see it as a bit of a Mickey Mouse series, which is a shame because fundamentally it's actually very exciting. Is Formula E, and I mean I don't know if you watch too much Formula E. I've kind of I always watched the first 2 seasons, I believe it was, and last season I watched. I thought it was excellent, and these new Gen 2 cars are brilliant. The fact that they can do an entire race compared to, I think the first 2 seasons when they had to make a pit stop and swap cars was, I think it kind of disengaged the viewers a lot. But I think with what Formula E is doing is showing that if you can get past that sort of, yes, the cars sound like remote control cars, you can still have fundamentally good racing. Obviously they're not as powerful, they're not as fast. They drive on majority street circuits, so you don't quite get the blistering speeds that we see in Formula One, but you do see nose to tail racing and a lot of overtaking. So it is gonna very slowly start creeping into the lives of those in Formula One, and they will look to the likes of Formula E as how to really sort of bring that and adapt it into Formula One's sort of lifestyle.
It just shows you, doesn't it, with Formula E, where they're going with the manufacturers. They're getting interested in Formula. You've got Mercedes now in there, Audi. You've got so many big name companies in Formula E, and it just shows you. For me, it shows you one key thing is how costly F1 is, and why these big manufacturers who you'd love to see in Formula One just are avoiding Formula One just because of the cost of being in that sport. You've seen famously, I think it was Audi and Porsche pulling out of WEC because of how costly that was, and you see what Formula E are doing. And for me, Formula E, I try to enjoy it. I'll be honest with you, I try to enjoy it. I just can't enjoy it. I don't know why. There's things about it. It might sound silly saying this, but it just looks like a series for Formula One has-beens half the time. Yes, the series, I've seen bits and I've seen some races. The racing, from what I've seen, it is nose to tail. It's pretty close. It frustrates me a bit that it's mainly all street circuits as well. That frustrates me. I'd like to see some variation, not to the same degree as Formula One, but some actual race circuits would just change it up a little. I get a little bored of all the same style races all the time. That's what I think I said in the previous podcast, but. Formula E, I'll try and watch the new series, but I'll probably once again just get bored of it. And for me, just the thrill of Formula One, you for the speed and everything else, that always grips me. And unfortunately, I've just never took to Formula E. Unfortunately,
I think it is definitely a little bit of a Marmite series at the moment,
yeah,
and I can understand why, and I can understand fans of long-time fans of Formula One sort of being hesitant when it comes to Formula E. But what I do like about it is it is able, because it is, as you say, mainly street circuits, and I do agree. It would be nice to see them take to a circuit, and kind of see what the cars can do more, like, sort of opened up. But it does give the ability to take a racing series on especially an FIA one, around the world. Like we see this season, they're going to they've got 2 races in Saudi Arabia, good or bad, we'll find out. But you've got Chile, Mexico, Morocco, China, Italy, France, South Korea, Indonesia, Germany, a street circuit in the United States around New York, and 2 races to finish off the season around London. And in fact, one of them, I say one of them, they're both actually going through the London Excel Centre. So yeah, I'm actually hoping that I can get tickets to that, because I think it should be really, really fun to watch. So it's, yeah, I think when you look at sort of, and I mean, we'll go back to Formula One, if they can sort of emulate the likes of what Formula E are doing, and maybe not obviously moving to these street circuits, maybe not that sort of but it's, if they can kind of look at what Formula E are doing with how they are back to basics, and then equally the fact that they are becoming so attractive to these big companies. And it's, you can see that Formula One, like we've seen that they've got the big three revolution going on at the moment with Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, that are really sort of have dominated proceedings over the however many years you'd say, since since Renault last won the championship in 2006, I believe, or McLaren, sorry. And that it was that you've kind of got these big three teams that have really dominated Formula One. And you look at Formula E now, you've got Nissan, you've got Jaguar, you've got BMW, Mercedes have moved a team over into Formula E. You've got Porsche, like you say, and Audi that have moved out of WEC and moved into Formula E. So it's definitely, there's obviously something about it that works for them, because I mean, obviously it means these teams can work on their electric engines that they can then sell to the general public. But equally, you've got to see something. They've obviously seen something in Formula E that they're not seeing in Formula One.
yeah, I agree, and it all comes down to what you alluded to earlier. It makes them look good, doesn't it? If they're going into a series that promotes electric racing and promotes all this efficient way of going about racing, it looks good for the likes of Porsche and Audi and BMW and Jaguar. They look like they are racing the right way, and that's how the future of racing should go. So yeah, I don't want to be that cynical person again, but it's just, for me, that's the other thing that I just can't get with Formula E, is it just seems like it's just a way of ticking a load of boxes to people and saying, look what we're doing, we're racing the cleanest way possible and all this. And yeah, they're doing the right thing with attracting these big names, but am I being cynical? I think I'm being cynical. I just think it's just a clever way, and I assume it must be cheaper than the likes of WEC and Formula One, but it is a clever way to show that you're trying your best in the motorsport world to race clean and efficiently.
Yeah, so we'll be looking back on this in 20 years' time when we've got driverless Formula One cars that are completely electric.
God.
It's it's going to be interesting to see what Formula One can do with this 10-year plan to go carbon neutral. It's going to be interesting to see if they can get to that 2025 halfway stage and they can go sustainable as well. Like I said, I'm all for them kind of trying to move forward with going carbon neutral and looking to go carbon positive in the future, and equally using as much of this revenue that they've got in Formula One at the moment to create decent engines that they can benefit the general public with, because it's one thing that is going to be probably the biggest issue that will involve us and the next generation. So it's gonna it's good to see Formula One are taking it somewhat seriously, yeah, so we'll see what they can do in the future. And jumping off point, talking about the future, it's been confirmed that the future of Red Bull will see Max Verstappen and Alex Albon. 2020 lineup has been confirmed, and they will be in the Red Bull for next season. And Pierre Gasly staying at Toro Rosso. And we've talked about this for a number of weeks since they made that swap in the summer break. Are you surprised that Alex has been given the seat, or do you think he's deserved it?
I'm not surprised in the slightest. We, like you say, we have discussed it several times during this. First discussed it when it was announced in the summer break, and we were both a bit maybe he might just do about the same as Pierre Gasly. He might do a bit better. We wasn't quite sure. We said as well he's going to have to get down to it straight away with the first couple of races, and I think he's fully deserved it, to be honest. He's stepped into that car, and yes, out and out pace-wise, I don't think he's quite there yet with Max Verstappen, and may not ever get there with Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is an exceptional talent, and there's not many people out there would beat him in an equal car, I'd say, but that's another story. But Alex Albon He's come in and, by the most part, outscored Max Verstappen since he's been in that Red Bull. So to do that is a huge achievement because of especially what Pierre Gasly was doing in that same car in the first half of the season. Just shows you the astronomical change and shows you that that car wasn't really that bad. I just think Pierre was. Maybe the pressure of the Red Bull seat and everything else and the way that maybe the car set up just didn't suit Pierre, because he's come back into that Toro Rosso now, hasn't he? And it's like the Pierre we've seen before he went into Red Bull. He seems a lot more settled. He seems racier. He's been getting into the top 10 a few times in that car. So I think overall, Alex Albon definitely does deserve it, and I wish him all the very best for next season. I think overall it's the best for both parties. I think it would have been wrong to put Pierre back in that seat because he just did not capitalise on the opportunity, and it just didn't work out for him. And Alex has grasped it with two hands. So yeah, for me it's the perfect lineup for Red Bull next year. I just hope they back Alex now, because I'd hate to see Alex go through some difficulties like Pierre next season when the 2020 car's revealed and they suddenly oust him because it's not going so well. They need to, like Lewis said in a press conference, they need to back Alex now and give him the full support like they have done with Max. And if they do, they have a good lineup there for several years, Red Bull, with Max and Alex. So the future's there for Red Bull. They've just got to look after it.
Yeah, fully agree. And I think what will be interesting moving forward is I mean, we know what a talent Max Verstappen is. Whether you love him or not, he is a fantastic talent. And it's whether they kind of they see that difference between where Max is in his career and where Alex is. Obviously, Max has been in Formula One for a number of years now, so he's well ingrained. He knows all the circuits, and whereas Alex, we know, is worked through this calendar. Some of these tracks it's the first time he's been to. The likes of the USA, Brazil will be the first time that he's raced there. So he's to be finishing in the top 5 is what would have been expected of him, but
yeah,
it's something that Pierre wasn't doing earlier in the season. I mean, Pierre, you could see finishing 8th in Bahrain, 8th in Canada, 10th in France, and it was the likes of that. That's what cost him the chance, because he was having these times where he'd perhaps have an issue and get knocked to the back of the grid and then struggle to fight through. And we saw with Alex, he had this fantastic drive in Kota in the last race where he was able to fight through after we made 3 pit stops and managed to overtake everyone again. So they showed you he had the pace to be at the front. So yeah, I'm really, really happy they've locked him in. I really hope they do kind of really look after him over the next season or so, and because I think Red Bull is one thing they need. I think in the next few years is just a little bit of consistency, because they are becoming that sort of that almost that Chelsea like now. If you equate it to football or soccer, it's that they are replacing every time something almost goes wrong, or just to sort of make sure that something it's they're kind of just swapping that driver line up. And my worry is if Alex has maybe a poor start to next season, they
Yeah.
swap him and Pierre back around again, and I think that would be bad for both guys' careers, because I think there's obviously a stigma about that second seat. It's not obviously sitting alongside Max, because if Max is going to be performing to this above and beyond level, I imagine Christian Horner and Helmut Marko will probably be expecting the number two driver to be at least trying to push on his heels. So it's whether they see this sort of number one and number two, or if they are expecting Alex to sort of next season really raise his game and start challenging Max for these sort of podium positions.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say that's the only thing Alex, I think, needs to focus on next year. I think, like we say, it was never really going to be expected that he would, in an out-and-out race, beat Max and qualifying and out-qualify him. With Max being in that car already and comfortable, it was always going to be a learning process for Alex in that car. But like you say, I do worry with that team, even though I don't support them, and I do worry because it's just the mental side of being in that team must be so high strung, because you could go through a couple of races having a bad result, and instead of somebody coming up to you and putting their arm around you saying, look, we are struggling, we're going to work on this, that, we're going to get it right, don't worry. It's a case of, am I going to get kicked out of the team now? And that in itself probably was on top of Pierre after how it started for him and how things weren't quite right for him. He must have felt the pressure on his shoulders, knowing that if he keeps performing at in 8th, 9th and 10th place where he shouldn't really be, it's just going to keep getting worse. And mental side, I'm very, very amazed at how they can cope with these sort of pressures in Formula 1, because I'd say the Red Bull seat, that second seat alongside Max, got to be one of the most pressured seats in Formula 1 at the moment, because Max, in Red Bull's eyes, he's their hero, their saviour. He can do no wrong, and he's the one that's going to lead them to, hopefully for their case, another championship. And that second seat is just a case of filling it in for somebody who can hopefully perform and be alongside Max. Like you say, if Alex can just step up then next season and be that little bit close to Max, then I think Alex will be alright. Like you say, just hope we just don't have a slow start from Alex.
Yeah, and I think he's been, like you've seen the last few races, he's been sort of much closer to in qualifying as well, which will give him a huge sort of confidence boost moving forward. But I think it is interesting to see what Red Bull do in the future, because we know that there's already been stories going around in the junior formula and even down to karting that people are being persuaded and told not to sign for the Red Bull Junior Academy because it is so brutal. I mean, we saw just quite recently, you've seen Pato O'Ward, who I was raving about when he signed for the Red Bull Academy quite recently, after winning Indy Lights and impressing in a couple of IndyCar races, that he signed for Red Bull, went over to do the Super Formula in Japan, and did a couple of races for Mugen out there, and suddenly he struggled in a guest race in F2, struggled in a couple of Super Formula races out there, and then now finds himself in the new McLaren team over in IndyCar. So it's there's obviously something inside Red Bull that perhaps, whether the drivers don't like it, whether their agents don't like it, or equally if Red Bull just are they just a machine that are just waiting for that next Seb Vettel, that next Max Verstappen, and they're quite happy on kind of churning out these drivers and just dropping them off and discarding them if they're not up to what they're expecting. So yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what Red Bull do over the next few years. And but so yeah, with that seat gone, obviously tied up now with Toro Rosso and Red Bull. Last remaining seat on the calendar, on the grid, yet to be announced, is that at Williams. We know that Nico Hulkenberg is still technically a free agent. Nicholas Latifi looks like he's going to be taking that seat that's currently filled by Robert Kubica. But I mean, there was quite strong rumours linking Nico Hulkenberg to the DTM. Are we thinking that Latifi is pretty much nailed on for that second Williams seat, or is there going to be a twist at the end of the season?
I'd say Latifi's nailed on. He's been getting runs out in Friday practice, hasn't he? And I'm sure he's got scheduled for Brazil tomorrow a run out in the Williams again. So that to me says, with the amount of time he's getting behind the wheel of that car, it looks pretty nailed on. If you look back to last year with McLaren, they were putting Lando in that car quite a lot on Fridays, replacing either Fernando or Stoffel, and it eventually paved its way towards Lando getting into that seat for this season. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Latifi in there. He's got good money behind him. He's a good racer as well. He's done well in F2, hasn't he? So I think for me, it's the best way to go, because I like Nico Hulkenberg, but I don't know what your opinion is, but Nico Hulkenberg now, I understand the Renault car hasn't been great this year, but Nico Hulkenberg, he's just kind of like drifted along this season, and he's not really being the Nico Hulkenberg we know he's capable of, and he's just drifted through races, and he's picked up 11th, 12th, he's had DNFs, and it's just like half the time you're not even aware he's on the track. And unfortunately, his career in Formula One is sadly just drifting away now, and unfortunately he's going to end up in the likes of DTM or IndyCar or whatever he ends up in after Formula One. It's a real shame for Nick Hulkenberg, because I think if things had slightly gone his way in the past, he might have got that illustrious podium and this, that, and other, and things might have gone better for him. But unfortunately, from my opinion, Nico Hulkenberg is going out with a bit of a whimper now, and it's a bit of a shame to see, really.
Yeah, I think he'll probably go down in history as pretty much the biggest F1's nearly man, of one of these guys that really should have sort of exploded, or at least picked up a podium, if not a win, and always seems to have just eluded him. So it will be a shame. And he is one of those drivers that I think people quite like, because he's very honest when he's talking. He's very good with the media, and equally he's very consistent in the car and on the track. So yeah, it does look like, as you say, that Latifi will be taking that second seat at Williams. I have George Russell as a far superior driver over Nicholas Latifi, so it'll be interesting to see if they have a 1-2 dynamic next season. But yeah, it's Nico looks like he's heading off to the DTM, which isn't a bad place to go. We know that several ex-F1 drivers head over to the DTM. Of course, Paul di Resta races there on and off, and it's a competitive series. So yeah, it will be a shame, but it does look like Nico is heading over to the DTM. And finally, before we get on to wrapping up for pre-season, of course, the Invictus Racing League, we'll just quickly preview this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. And Lewis Hamilton, first race since he won that 6th World Championship. The battle between him and Valtteri is done. Obviously, that battle between Valtteri has already sewn him up in second position. So it's really a fight now, third place in the championship, which I'm sure no one is that fussed about. It's more for pride now between Max Verstappen and two Ferraris. Last year, obviously, there was that issue with Verstappen crashing or being crashing out, being crashed into. It depends on your opinion there. But with Esteban Ocon, gifted Lewis the win. What do you see with Max and the two Ferraris? Who could do with that third place in the championship?
If you say who could do with that third place, I would probably say Seb Vettel could do with it the most, because he'll want to finish the season beating Charles Leclerc, he'll not want to finish the season behind his teammate, his new teammate, the young up-and-comer, because then suddenly everybody will be saying, well, Seb should be a number 2, Seb should be this, and Charles should be getting priorities, and Seb won't want that at all. Max has already nailed on as a number 1, and knowing all F1 drivers, they all want to beat each other. They always want to be the best. But I just think, who needs it more? I'd say Seb Vettel, just to get one up on his teammate, to finish the season off with a positive note after the struggles he's had this year, and he can then hope. I know this is not the final race this weekend, but they can look to aim at ending the season positively and then go into next season fresh and starting clean and going from there. Whereas if Charles Leclerc was to steal that from him, he's going to be on a huge crest wave, isn't he, into pre-season and into the first race in Australia, and Seb will be under massive pressure then, because if Charles is then beating him early on, Seb's going to be under huge pressure to keep his number 1 status if he's still got it by then. So for me, the must would be with Vettel, but in my opinion this weekend, I think Max will be on a bit of not say revenge, because Esteban Ocon's not racing, but he'll be on a mission, won't he, to rectify what happened last year, because like you say, he was on for the win, and it was all gifted nicely to Lewis Hamilton, and Max goes well around Brazil, so I think from my point of view, I think Max will be definitely one to watch this weekend.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how good the Red Bulls are around here, because they tend to go pretty well around Brazil and have done in the past. So yeah, I mean there's currently it's advantage Charles in the championship. He's on 249, Max back on 235, and Seb back on 230. So 19 points, the gap between the two Ferraris, with Charles Leclerc much healthier in that lead. So 2 races to go. Seb needs a couple of good results, and possibly needs Charles Leclerc to either have a retirement or an issue that might cost him a whole bundle of points. But I mean, Seb, apart from those 2 retirements in Russia and obviously last week and of 2 weeks ago in the USA, he was first in Singapore, second in Japan and Mexico. So he's on a, apart from, as I said, apart from the retirements, he's had a decent end of this season. So I'm sure that he'll look to sort of finish off quite strongly. Whereas Charles, 6th in Japan, 4th in Mexico, and 4th in USA. So he's not been on the podium since Russia, since he had that lovely 4 race spell with Belgium and Italy, the 2 wins there, the 2nd place in Singapore and the 3rd place in Russia. He's been off the podium for the last 3 races. So yeah, I think it's all to play for with those 3. And I mean, Max is a complete unknown quantity. You never know what you're going to get from him race to race, which is kind of, I imagine, quite exciting. But if you're Christian Horner, probably quite frustrating, because he knows just how well Max can do if he's actually if in the right frame of mind. But if you look down through the championship, I mean, you've still got a battle going on between Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz, technically for 6th and 7th in the championship. So that, I mean, Alex has got to stay on his game. He's got to keep getting those 5th place finishes, those 4th place finishes, if he is going to be behind Max. But that's going to keep him ahead of Carlos. And then you've got this fight going on a little bit further down between Daniel Ricciardo, Sergio Perez, Lando Norris, and Nico Hulkenberg, all split by 9 points for 9th position in the championship. And I mean, we talk about him each week, and I don't really, I feel like we give him a lot of praise and equally a lot of highlighting in the podcast. But Lando, he could do with kind of finishing in that 9th place. We know that he's not gonna overhaul Pierre Gasly up on 77 points. It's almost mathematically impossible unless he wins a couple of races. But he could really do finishing inside the top 10 and get himself closing that gap between himself and Carlos somewhat.
Yeah, I agree. It was a nice race for him, wasn't it? Back in the USA last time out. The strategy call was right, and he got good pace not only in the race but in qualifying as well. And if he can finish off these last two races on a positive note, no issues, no pit stop problems, no engine issues, anything like that. If he can take this form what he got in USA, we know he's quick, and take it through to Brazil and Abu Dhabi. I don't see why he couldn't grab that ninth place. And if he can, similar to what I've just said with Seb, it will fill him with confidence going into the winter break, because I don't know if you pay close attention to Lando's tweets and stuff, but he really does kick himself quite a lot when races haven't gone his way, and you can understand sort of, but you can also try to say to him, look, it's your first season, yeah, things aren't going your way and things have been taken out of your hand, but overall you've still raced well, and I think sometimes he does struggle mentally with tough races like at Mexico when they had the pit stop issue. So to finish on a positive note and to get that ninth place would be huge for Lando in his first season in Formula One. And similar to what you were saying about Alex Albon, he's not raced for most half of this half of this calendar. That's USA and Singapore and what have you. So all learning curve for Lando as well, and it's all going to be massive experience for next year. And I think, however the outcome, I think if he does get ninth, great. But if he doesn't, however the outcome, it's only going to be great experience for him. And going into 2020, I'm sure he'll be full of beans and will be raring to go. And hopefully, if the car is good, we shall see him fighting much closer to Carlos than what he has done so far this season.
Yeah, and I think you've got to look to see if he can push on next season before they move over to Mercedes, of course. So there's maybe a little bit of change going on behind the scenes with McLaren, whether they can maintain this definite fourth place constructors we've seen this season. So yeah, hopefully Lando can get himself into some decent points playing positions this season and moving on through to the next. So obviously Brazilian Grand Prix this weekend, quali on Saturday if you're in the UK at 6 p.m, race on Sunday at 5 p.m, and just before we move on to the Invictus pre-season results. What are you going for your podium finishes tonight? Let's get a 1, 2, 3 from yourself for who you think is going to take the win and standing next to him on the podium.
I'm going to say Lewis, Max, Seb.
Another victory for Lewis, getting him closer to Michael. I'm gone. I know you.
I was just gonna say, I think even though Lewis has claimed his sixth world championship now, he'll be going for all records, won't he? And he'll not want to finish the season just finishing in like third or fourth or fifth or what have you. Lewis is a natural winner, isn't he? And he'll want to win as much as he can. And if he can win the last two races, that's just the way he is, isn't he? So I can imagine, even though he's just recently won his sixth title, I don't think he's going to be easing up.
I'm gonna go completely left field here. I'm gonna go Max Verstappen takes the win, and then I'm gonna go Valtteri in second, and Alex Albon in third.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just
go to the bookies and get that bet put on.
I'm gonna just try something different, and hopefully, I think a podium for Alex would be great. I think that will really set him up for next season as well. So yeah, it's not that I'm wishing an incident between the two Ferraris and Lewis Hamilton as much as I'd love to see Lewis break that record from Michael. Yeah, I'd love to see Alex stand on the podium in towards the end of the season. I know he's good in Abu Dhabi as well, so it'd be interesting to see what he can. I often find that my catchphrase on this podcast will be, "It will be interesting to see." So it will be interesting to see if he can do well in Abu Dhabi, because I know that he's done fantastically well there in F2 in the fast. So yeah, I can't wait to see what Alex can do over the next two races. And then finally, with the last few minutes or so of the podcast, we will quickly run over the Invictus Racing League pre-season results. And of course, we're not just an F1 podcast here. We are based off of an PS4-based eSports F1 2019 and GT Sport League named Invictus Racing League. And if you're not aware of it, what are you doing? Go to the website invictusracingleague.com and check us out. But it was our 2 pre-season races before we start season 9 next week at the Hungarian Grand Prix at the Hungaroring. There we go.
Easier said than
There's a tongue twister. And yeah, so we had 2 races. The first race of pre-season was in France, and the second race was this week in Japan. And 4 leagues we have on F1 2019 this season. We have IRL F1 on a Monday night, 8 p.m, commentated on by Sab and I. IRL Realistic Performance on a Tuesday with Tim and Malc in the commentary box. IRL F2 on a Wednesday night with Warislander and Dan in the commentary box. And IRL F3 on a Wednesday night, 8 p.m, with Tim and Malc also back from Tuesday night commentating on that one. And Sab, F1 is probably the best place we can talk about it, and we'll quickly run over the Race 1 and Race 2 results. Race 1 was won by Foxy Red 2000, White Fountain in second, and CPI Alex a surprise podium in third, but he was delighted with. Race 2, brand new driver, came in, took the pole, took the win, Jumperlinen. Fantastic result from him. He was followed home by last season's former league, No Assist League, FPL Charlie. He was in second place. Foxy Red back on the podium in third position. So how do you rate overall with pre-season in the IRL F1 League?
Unpredictable. I think this season, Charlie briefly sent me some messages, and I agree. It's going to be so difficult to work out who's going to be the quickest. Charlie doesn't believe he is the quickest, but like I said to him, it's all about being consistent. And if you could be consistent in this league, you win championships, and Charlie proved it last season in the No Assist League, that even though he didn't win a race, he was consistent and he won the championship. And John Polainen was absolutely superb in the second race, absolute unknown, didn't know what to expect from him. He blitzed qualifying with a superb time, and then blitzed the race as well. But one guy I'd like to point out I thought was really good in the F1 League was Foxy Red. I thought his defending was superb, his racecraft was superb. I think he'll look to go into the next week's race feeling good about himself, knowing that he's picked up 2 podiums. But who do you pick? Because you had Boy Better Know Scott who didn't have the opportunity to race in pre-season due to some technical difficulties. You've got Speed Queen, who seems to be back up to her usual quick self. Sam of the Pitto, White. It's just the list goes on, doesn't it? And you could find yourself having multiple race winners and multiple varieties of different podiums this season. So F1 this season is going to be absolutely superb to watch.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this season. Like you said, you do not know who's going to win with race to race, and I think that is you usually go into a season thinking, well, we've got maybe 2 or 3 people that can pick up the championship at the end of the season. And you look at the list of who's in IRL F1 this season, and it is genuinely, you've got a list of at least 8, if not more, with people with, I could see them picking up a win. So I think I predicted at the start, I think it was for the F1 League, I'm expecting to see at least 6 different race winners, and I'd love to see that. I think it'd be brilliant. I want to see the championship going down to the last race of the season. I think there is so much talent stacked in IRL F1 this season coming up. So make sure you join Sab and I for that next Monday, 8 p.m. here on the YouTube channel. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you do. And equally, ding the bell next to it to be notified when we go live with all streams. Tuesday night, and it's the Realistic Performance League. Realistic Performance, if you're new to us, it is your car is allocated to you that week, dependent on your race pace, depending on your position on the previous race, or it might be your championship standing, and so you are allocated. Obviously, the faster drivers are in the slower cars, slower drivers are in the faster cars. So it tends to try and balance out the results. And what we didn't think was in the Realistic Performance League preseason, when the cars are on equal standing, that we would have two completely different podiums. So race 1 was the three-time champion Skyzy, Ferocious Dan in second, and TL44S in third. Race 2 was Jos Eintze in first, with Biofreak SA in second, and Sheepy in third. Sab, as you're part of the Realistic Performance League, how do you go from having a competitive performance league where the guys are in realistic performance and you tend to see the same podium, you put them in equal cars and you see two completely different podium results?
It is bizarre, isn't it? But again, I think it shows you how competitive this league is going to be as well. I think this is going to be another very exciting league to be part of this season. You've got Skyzy, who you can never rule out. Unfortunately for him, in the Japanese Grand Prix, the second race, he crashed out, so that was not good for him. But Ferocious Dan, he's been absolutely mighty in this pre-season so far. We'll get on to why shortly. Ferocious Dan is certainly one to keep an eye on. TL44S, he was the runner-up last season. My teammate Tom, he's a superb driver. He's usually there or thereabouts. You've got Biofreak, who's in there as well. There's Jos as well. You've got so many people in this league again who could potentially win. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see the allocations for many of these fast guys and how they get on with the likes of being in the Williams, for example, or Alfa Romeo. Sorry. So it's going to be very interesting. From week to week, you could have, like in the IRL F1 League, you could have multiple race winners in here, and this pre-season being on equal terms just proves how competitive this league is, with having these totally mixed up podiums.
Yeah, always a really exciting league to watch. So make sure you tune in Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. on YouTube. You've got your Anglo-American commentary team of Tim and Malc in the box. So make sure you join them for that one. And on to Wednesday, 2 races on a Wednesday. You've got IRL F2 and IRL F3. It's quite a mouthful, but IRL F2. Race 1, as you said, and just alluded to, Ferocious Dan taking the win ahead of Biofreak and Aaron JS in third. Race 2, Ferocious Dan once again absolutely blitzing it ahead of new driver RG4422 and Nick L.J. Thompson, who of course won the F2 League a few seasons ago and started way at the back and managed to come through and pick up third place. So yeah, I mean, what do we say about Dan? Last season's F3 champion moves up to F2 and he's already taken the 2 pre-season races. You've already got to mark him down as a potential championship threat, really.
Yeah, you have. You've got to say he's a contender for this year's title, and what an achievement that would be. I don't know if it's happened before, but to win F3 and step up the following season into F2 and win F2. That would be unbelievable if you could manage it. Now, I'm not saying he's going to. There is still some very, very talented guys in this league, as I'm finding out, and you know as well. So it's not going to be easy for Dan. I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as what it was in F3 for him last season, but he's certainly carried this form from F3 into F2, and at the moment, where he's going into it, you've got to put him down as the favourite for the Hungarian Grand Prix next week, with winning these 2 races against the likes of Biofreak, Aaron and Nick, who, let's say, is a previous champion, and many others in this league. Ferocious Dan looks in red-hot form, and he is the man to beat at the minute. Yeah, I'm glad he's my teammate this season, because we might score some decent points at the McLaren team.
Oh, I don't know. You'll probably let the team down a bit, so I'll worry about that. But yeah, so F2 once again super competitive. We'll see if the F3 champion from last season, Ferocious Dan, can to really introduce himself to the league next week in Hungary. So join up with Energy Dan and the Warislander for that lovely little commentary pairing from the 2 Wednesday night 8 p.m. on YouTube. And then finally on to F3. Race 1 was won by Dragio, Bag of Bones in second, and Nitrogash, very popular driver, in third position. Race 2 was, I love this one, was F1 Richard took the win ahead of Brennons, and Tynus, after dropping down from F2 into F3, picked up a podium, it's great to see Tynus competing up in towards the top end of the field. But F1 Richard, he's yet to win in competitive races. I believe he holds the record for third most races without picking up a victory. So I bet he'll be slightly aggrieved that he's picked up his first one in pre-season. But F3, it's one that we both know quite well. But it's one that you can never, much like the majority of them, but it's so hard to predict who's going to win race to race, isn't it?
Yeah, F1 Richard, I can imagine would be quite frustrated that it's not going to be on the official records as a win. Brennons, I think, he's shown signs last season when I raced against him that he does have decent pace, and I think I wouldn't be surprised to see him get on the podium regular this season, maybe even pick up a win. And like you say, Nitrogash as well, he's a popular driver. He'll definitely be up there. You've also got the likes of our site director Craig in there, who we know can have a good race this time, and Stephen as well, who's desperate to get that race win. He's been ever so close last season, as we've spoken about before, and I'm really sure that he will finally get that win this season. But F3 will be great to watch again. There is some really good guys in that league, and I think, no disrespect to Dan, but now Dan's not in that league, I think the battle for the championship is going to be much closer this season, and it's going to be much harder to predict.
Yeah, it definitely opens up the floor for new guys to move towards the front end of the grid. So yeah, that's our 4 leagues pre-season all wrapped up round 1 next week in Hungary. So make sure you join us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for all of those. And of course, you can check out all of the league's standings and the teammates and the allocations on the website invictusracingleague.com. Equally, go to all of the socials, Invictus RL on Twitter and Instagram, Invictus Racing League on Facebook, where you can find any further details about the league if you'd like to get yourself on the grid and join us as part of Invictus Racing League. It's always great to have new people within the community. And that brings us wrapped up quite nicely, just around the hour mark. So we will finally finish up with that time of the week that Sam always looks forward to, around about that 9 p.m. moment on a Thursday evening, and it's the hot lap question. And it's of course, we'll give Sam a question. It might be a hypothetical one, it might be an actual question with an answer, and he has 1 minute to give me the answer to that question. And well, tonight he's going to have to get his thinking cap on once again.
Oh, no.
We know how much he loves doing that, and it's, of course, we quickly, briefly touched upon Red Bull earlier, of course, locking down Alex Albon for the 2020. And Alex became the 18th driver to drive for Red Bull since they entered Formula One in 2005. I would like you to tell me, including Toro Rosso, so this is the Red Bull teams, Red Bull and Toro Rosso, can you name the other 17 drivers that have raced for Toro Rosso or Red Bull since their first race in 2005?
Wow. All right then. So David Coulthard.
Yep.
Mark Webber.
Yep.
Sebastian Vettel.
Yep.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Yep.
Obviously Pierre Gasly. Toro Rosso. Danny Kvyat. What was the Spanish guy called? This is tough. I can't think.
You got six so far.
Yeah, I'm struggling. Jaime Alguersuari, is that his name?
It is. Well done.
That's what I was trying to think of. I can't think of any. This probably ran over the minute. Sebastian Buemi.
There we go. There's another. You got 10 seconds left.
Now. Yeah. Carlos Sainz.
There we go. There's another. I'm surprised you didn't get Carlos.
I'm surprised I didn't get that sooner.
Right. And that's
I'm
it.
struggling now.
Yeah, here we go. Well, that's not bad. You got half of them. You got 9 down. So you missed Christian Klein, who was
Yeah, I once got him.
David Coulthard's partner in 2005, Antonio Liuzzi and Robert Dornbos in 2006. And then Scott Speed, Sebastian Bourdais, and Jean-Eric Verne, you missed out as well.
Oh yeah.
And of course Brendan Hartley 2 years ago.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So what I was doing then was I was trying to think of Red Bull-based drivers in other series. Because most of them who are in other series have either been in a Toro Rosso or a Red Bull at some point. That's what I was trying to think of. But yeah, that was tough. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you can find that and more next Thursday on episode 21 of the podcast. I'm sure we'll be wrapping up the Brazilian Grand Prix and many more of the crazy stories that come out of F1 over the next 7 days. But like I said, if you want to check out more to do with Invictus Racing League, make sure you check out the website invictusracingleague.com, Invictus RL on Twitter and Instagram, Invictus Racing League on Facebook, and and speak to us if you'd like to get involved in the community and get yourself on the grid for F1 2019. We also race on GT Sport on a Thursday night as well, so plenty of opportunities for you to get racing, get commentating, and get helping out behind the scenes. And equally, if you aren't already, make sure you subscribe to us on all of the podcasting apps if you want to listen to this back and it's not live. And of course, that's on SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. They'll be uploaded on Friday or on Saturday, depending on how busy we are. And but yeah, that's us done for this week, guys. We will see you on Monday night for the first round of the IRL F1 League, and in that 3 or 4 days, hopefully I'll be able to get my tongue around saying IRL F1 continuously, as not to come out as a gorbled mess. But have a great weekend, guys. Enjoy the race, and we cannot wait to see you join us next week for the first round. And equally, we'll see you back next Thursday for the podcast. Have a great one, guys. See you later.